K-drama cycle. There are years that pass quietly, and then there are years that feel charged with meaning before anything even happens. For Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong, 2026 feels different, not because of one headline or one confirmed project, but because of everything that has quietly aligned. For fans who have followed their journeys for years, this doesn't feel like coincidence anymore. It feels like timing. Park Bogum enters 2026 no longer as the nation's gentle prince finding his footing again, but as an actor who has crossed a long bridge. Military service, careful project choices, and a visible shift in maturity have reshaped how the industry looks at him. He isn't chasing popularity now. He's choosing meaning. Every appearance carries a calm confidence, as if he knows exactly where he stands and where he's headed next. Kim Yuyong, meanwhile, stands at a crossroads of her own. No longer introduced as a former child actress, she has fully claimed her place as a leading woman with depth, range, and quiet authority. Her recent roles haven't been loud, but they've been deliberate. Each project feels like a statement. She is building a legacy, not just a resume. And somehow, in the middle of all this growth, their names keep circling each other again. Fans notice it first. They always do. The way interviews reference actors I grew up with. The way industry insiders speak carefully when asked about future collaborations. The way nostalgia resurfaces, not as longing for the past, but as curiosity about what could finally be explored now. Because this time, the circumstances are different. Back then, they were young, careful, and surrounded by expectations bigger than themselves. Any connection was framed as innocence, timing too early, paths not yet formed. But in 2026, both Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong stand fully realized. Artists who know their strengths, their limits, and their worth. That changes everything. What fans sense isn't romance alone, it's readiness. Readiness for a story that couldn't exist before. Readiness for roles that demand emotional balance rather than youthful intensity. Readiness for a partnership, on screen or otherwise, that feels grounded instead of rushed. The industry feels it too. Casting rumors don't explode the way they used to. They simmer. Producers talk about chemistry that ages well. Directors mention actors whose history adds weight instead of distraction. In conversations about prestige projects, their names surface naturally, as if the idea has already been quietly accepted. And perhaps that's why 2026 feels heavier with possibility. Not because anything has been confirmed, but because nothing feels forced. If something happens this year, it won't feel like fan service. It will feel earned. If nothing happens, the anticipation alone proves how deeply their shared history still resonates. This isn't about reliving the past. It's about what becomes possible when two people who once stood at the beginning finally meet again, fully grown, fully prepared, and finally in control of their own stories. And that's why 2026 feels different for Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong. Because for the first time, the question isn't what if. It's what now? K-drama cycle. As the year continues, the silence around Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong begins to feel intentional rather than empty. In an industry that thrives on constant updates, their restraint stands out. No forced interactions. No carefully staged moments. Just two careers moving forward with quiet confidence, and somehow, that makes every small detail feel louder. Fans start noticing patterns instead of moments. They see how Park Bogum speaks about choosing roles that stay with people long after the final scene. They notice how Kim Yuyong describes wanting projects that reflect where I am now, not where I used to be. Different interviews, different stages, yet the same underlying direction. Growth, depth, permanence. And then there's the shift in how people talk about them together. Years ago, the conversation was playful, nostalgic, almost protective. Now it's measured, respectful. People aren't asking if they'd look cute together anymore. They're asking if they'd be powerful. If their shared history could add layers to a story instead of distracting from it. That change alone says everything about how far they've come. Industry whispers grow more specific. Not rumors shouted into the open, but ideas floated quietly. Scripts that require emotional restraint, stories built on unspoken understanding rather than dramatic declarations. The kind of roles that only work when two actors trust the silence between lines. Insiders suggest that if a reunion happens, it won't be loud. It won't be promoted as a spectacle. It will be allowed to speak for itself. And that's what makes fans restless. Because 2026 isn't filled with noise, it's filled with possibility. Every award show appearance, every behind-the-scenes mention, every indirect acknowledgement feels like another piece of a puzzle slowly forming. Nothing confirms everything, but nothing denies it either. Kim Yuyong, in particular, seems to embody this shift. Her recent choices signal someone no longer interested in proving anything. She carries herself with the ease of someone who knows her value isn't up for debate. Park Bogum mirrors that energy, calm, grounded, and visibly comfortable with where he is in his career and life. If they were to meet again in a project now, it wouldn't be about recreating old chemistry. It would be about discovering something new, something that only time could make possible. A story shaped by years of experience, restraint, and emotional intelligence. And perhaps that's why fans are patient this time. They're no longer demanding answers. They're watching, waiting, trusting that if something meaningful is meant to happen, it will happen without being forced into existence. Because in 2026, Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong don't feel like unfinished business. They feel like a chapter that finally knows when and how to begin. And until that moment arrives, the quiet itself is speaking louder than any confirmation ever could. K-drama cycle. What deepens the feeling that 2026 is different is not just where Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong stand individually, but how the world around them seems to have slowed down just enough to notice maturity instead of momentum. The industry is no longer chasing instant chemistry or viral moments alone. It's searching for stories that last, and that shift quietly favors actors like them. Observers begin to talk about emotional credibility. Not the kind that comes from dramatic tears or sweeping romance, but the kind that lives in restraint, timing, and trust. Park Bogum has mastered that space where a pause can speak louder than dialogue. Kim Yuyong has grown into it, where vulnerability feels controlled, intentional, and deeply human. That overlap is impossible to ignore. In the past, any hint of connection would have been rushed into headlines. In 2026, it lingers. Fans don't flood timelines demanding answers. Instead, they share edits, old clips, and thoughtful reflections. The tone has changed from excitement to appreciation, from speculation to understanding. And that may be the most telling sign of all. Because when audiences grow up with artists, they grow alongside them. The expectations shift. What once needed explanation now feels natural. The idea of Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong sharing space again, on screen or through a shared narrative, no longer feels like a surprise twist. It feels like alignment. There's also a sense of closure unfolding in real time. Both have spoken, separately, about wanting roles that reflect the present rather than revisit the past. And yet, that doesn't mean erasing history. It means allowing history to enrich what comes next. If they do reunite, it won't be framed as remember when. It will be framed as look how far we've come. That distinction matters, because 2026 doesn't feel like a year of revival. K-drama cycle. Because 2026 doesn't feel like a year of revival. It feels like a year of resolution. The kind that doesn't arrive with applause or dramatic announcements, but with quiet certainty. A sense that some stories don't need to be chased, they unfold when everyone involved is finally ready to let them breathe. Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong seem to embody that truth. There is a noticeable calm in how both navigate public attention now. They no longer rush to explain themselves, nor do they lean into nostalgia to stay relevant. Instead, they allow time to do its work. That patience has changed how people read their every move. Silence is no longer absence. It's intention. Fans, too, have changed. Where once there was impatience, there is now trust. Many who grew up watching them have grown into lives of their own, and in that growth, they recognize the value of timing. They understand that some connections matter more when they are not forced into the spotlight. That understanding has transformed anticipation into something softer, but deeper. And then there's the unspoken question that continues to hover. If they were to share a project again, what would it say about this stage of their lives? It wouldn't be a story driven by first love or youthful longing. It would be about choice, about responsibility, About two people meeting again not because fate pushed them together, but because they chose the same direction. That kind of story requires actors who can carry weight without excess, actors who can let a look linger without explaining it, actors who trust the audience to understand what's left unsaid. Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong have both reached that level. Industry conversations reflect this shift. Creators talk about wanting actors with shared history not for publicity, but for authenticity. A history that adds texture instead of distraction. In that context, their names don't spark chaos, they spark curiosity. And perhaps that is why nothing feels rushed in 2026. Because whatever happens, or doesn't, will feel right. If they cross paths publicly, it will feel natural. If they don't, the respect remains unchanged. There is no pressure to prove anything, no urgency to confirm what fans already feel in their bones. This is no longer about speculation. It's about recognition. Recognition that some connections don't fade, they evolve. That some partnerships don't need constant reaffirmation to remain meaningful. And that sometimes the most powerful chapters are the ones written slowly, with intention and trust. That is why 2026 feels different for Park Bogum and Kim Yuyong. Not because of what has been announced, but because of what no longer needs to be.